All right, hello everyone. I am Dennis McElroy, president of the ISTE Teacher Education Network PLN. I want to welcome all of you to the third out of 10 webinars in the series Championing Technology Infusion in Teacher Preparation. This series is sponsored by ISTE and the ISTE Teacher Education Network, and we hope that you have taken away some great information from the first two webinars. And if you missed either of them, the recordings, and also we'll be including today's webinar, can be found on the webinar registration site. So don't, go out there and check that stuff out. A link to the book chapter being explored today, Higher Education Faculty Competencies, will be posted in the webinar chat towards the end of the session, so don't forget to click on that. I know you're going to enjoy this amazing group of presenters today, and I'm going to turn it over to Teresa to introduce everyone.
Teresa, don't forget to unmute there.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Teresa Folger. I'm an associate professor of educational technology at Arizona State University and also one of the co-editors of our book, Championing Technology Infusion in Teacher Preparation. I'm joined today as an author of the chapter on the teacher educator technology competencies. I'm joined by Kevin Graziano, Denise Crawford, and David Slykeis.
Thanks, Teresa. So my name is Kevin Graziano. This webinar today is based on Chapter 5 in the textbook, Championing Technology Infusion in Teacher Preparation. And the title of our chapter, Chapter 5, is Professional Expectations for Teacher Educators, the Teacher Educator Technology Competencies, often referred to as the TETCs. So this session today, we will discuss approaches for how teacher educators can address professional expectations and professional development related to teaching with technology, and very specific to TETCs 4 and 7, really bringing it in focus to those two TETCs that speak to online teaching and learning. And at the end of this webinar, you'll be excited to know that all of you will receive a free link, a PDF, to a copy of this chapter, Chapter 5. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Denise, who will now share with you our agenda for today's session.
Thanks, Kevin. Welcome, everybody. We are really thrilled that all of you are with us and that we get to share some of our work around the TETCs and what that means for teacher educators. We're going to kind of go through a 4-step process here where we're going to kind of set the stage with a vision. Some of you, if you've joined the webinars before, Tech Infusion has been talked about. We're just going to review it so you know the context. We're going to share kind of a COVID-related session or scenario about the TETCs, and then we're going to get into kind of some resources and solutions, or talk about those, and be in conversations with you. So that's our plan for today, and we sure look forward to engaging with you in this process. So I think, Teresa, we're going to go back to you with technology infusion.
All righty. Well, it's fun to see everybody from so many different places, and I'm excited to share with you the ideas related to technology infusion, which is kind of a new vision for how technology integration is addressed in our preparation programs, or could be addressed. It's definitely a visionary approach. I don't think anybody has completely attained this vision yet. So bear with me as I kind of try to break down some paradigms and help you come along in this journey of drinking our Kool-Aid. So first of all, I wanted to explain the difference between technology integration and technology infusion. So the way that we're defining it, or have defined it in the book, is that technology integration would be a point in time where learning is happening and technology is leveraged for the power that it can provide. So in this diagram, those are the downward arrows indicating a point in time in a preparation program where technology is used for teaching and learning, or technology is addressed potentially with teacher candidates in their growth and development. So an example of that is how we are using Zoom, Google Slides, the chat, right? Those are all technology tools that are integrated into our learning right now for professional development. Technology infusion takes it a step further. It's a way to address technology integration through our preparation programs. It's a curriculum and a pedagogical process of growth and development that is developmentally appropriate for our teacher candidate. It takes them beyond that siloed approach of potentially a technology integration course, but beyond that into all other coursework in a program. So in an infusion approach, we claim that we would like to see technology integration being taught, modeled, and practiced by teacher candidates. So as you can tell, that's a very large undertaking from a programmatic perspective, because it moves outside of the walls of one course and really taps every system surrounding teacher preparation. Next slide. So some of you have seen my pink dot story and my red dot story. This is a little bit of a new iteration of it. But the pink line represents that growth and development of teacher candidates as they progress through a preparation program in their ability to teach with technology. Okay, that's a visionary approach. The pink dots are all of us. We all care about addressing technology along the way, and we might interject in appropriate ways as we see fit, related to helping teacher candidates grow in their capabilities. The white dots are people who haven't drank our Kool-Aid yet. Okay, so as champions, what we're professing in this book is that one of the roles of the champions is to recognize we have white dots, we have pink dots, and we also have red dots, people who are solely in charge of technology integration. And how do we get a synergistic effect when all of these efforts can join and join the line, right? So if you want to go to the next slide, there you go. How do we get to that point? And the point of this particular chapter is the professional development that's needed in the faculty. No, go ahead and stay on slide 8, please. How to support faculty in our preparation programs and their personal development, professional development, in their ability to address technology in their whatever course or opportunity it is they're supporting for the teacher candidates. And also, how do we get those white dots to become pink? So next slide, please. Denise and Kevin and David and I spent a lot of time together over a couple years in our most favorite meeting of the week, going through a very engaging and collaborative process of outreach to teacher educators across the country and nationally. And what resulted was a list of 12 competencies that people like me, teacher educators, would need to have in order to be the pinkest of pink, right? Where if I'm a science methods instructor, in order to be focused on my content, science, but also address technology integration in my course as not the primary content of the course, but as a concern that I have in developing, these 12 competencies would be helpful. And so we pose these as professional guidelines, professional development guidelines for teacher educators who are wishing to become pink and join the line, and you know, and be supportive in that progression in a programmatic way. I highlighted when I built this slide that TETSI number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 4 and 8 both have online opportunities represented, and we just kind of have a funny inside story about this, in that we weren't sure, as these TETSIs were published prior to COVID, we weren't sure that online teaching was a necessity for teacher educators to be able to address in their courseworks. And I think at this day, today, nobody would argue that this is an important part of our understanding of what technology can provide. And in my mind, online doesn't have to be completely online. It can be any version of online. And I think post-COVID, we'll see some major shifts in maybe online being a part of our context and our environment, not necessarily a pedagogical approach. So with that understanding of your role and what we're here today for, which is to talk about the development of faculty who teach in preparation programs and their ability to address technology infusion, I think I'm going to turn it over to David next, yes, to talk about some specifics.
Thanks, Teresa. That was a great background and a very succinct background.
Did I do it in 5 minutes?
Yeah, very nice.
you.
My name is David Slykeis. I'm at the University of Northern Colorado, and just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the scenario that we had in our chapter. So this book, each chapter in the book lays out a scenario to sort of think about, and then how to, in our case, how do the TETSIs address that scenario? So in our book chapter, we proposed a scenario that was basically the dean of a college of education went out and was meeting with school leaders, superintendents, and so forth, and was getting feedback from those school leaders that the teacher candidates that were going out to the schools weren't very well prepared to teach with technology. And so the dean takes this feedback, goes back to the College of Education, faculty meeting, is like, all right, our teacher candidates don't know how to use technology. Well, what are we going to do about this? And so we go through it in the chapter, and we go through some solutions to that. And you might be shocked to realize that we think that one solution about that is having the faculty more well prepared in the teacher educator technology competencies and the TETSIs. Well, if we were to rewrite this chapter now, we might think about, well, what would a scenario look like in COVID? And I think that this is a very realistic scenario. And I think this scenario happened a lot. So particularly last spring, when we were just entering into this pandemic, the schools very rightfully panicked and were like, what are we going to do? We're going to go online. It was a pretty common case that they broke, they basically had spring break, and they took that as time and maybe then an extra week after that to do some planning, and then came back virtually. And when they came back virtually, a lot of those teachers at that time had student teachers, had practicum students, and so had teacher candidates in their rooms with them. And now what were those teacher candidates to do in this online environment? Well, I think in many cases, I think the classroom teachers turned to those teacher candidates and were like, okay, you're the young one, you're the tech savvy one. What do we do here? How are we going to do this? How are we going to reach these students? And just because they're young and tech savvy, that gets to Prensky's notion of digital natives, doesn't mean that they have any idea how to teach online. Yeah, they're great at using their phone. They can Snapchat with the best of them. They can send a text message while holding their phone under their desk. They can do all these kind of things. But that doesn't mean that they're any more prepared to teach online than anybody else. And so now that it comes back to, well, are we really turning out teacher candidates that are prepared to teach in an online environment or in a hybrid environment? With this past year, we've had a lot of hybrid environment, and very much hybrid as in half the classes at home and half the classes in the room, which is a very different hybrid. And so are they prepared for that? And again, not shocking, you'll find that we think that the answer to that's in the TETSIs. And as we've highlighted, in particular, TETSI 4 and 7 really address these things. And as Teresa mentioned, we had a lot of internal conversations about even putting in these online and hybrid things. And it turns out that it absolutely was necessary and is important as we go forward. So we'll dive a little bit more into these as we have a chance we can talk about these scenarios and how the TETSIs and how teacher educators are prepared for this. So with that, I will turn it over to Denise.
Thanks, David. As we thought about this webinar, what we wanted to think about is kind of that idea of professional development around this idea. And I think David's scenario is a great example of, okay, we have teacher candidates who are going out, and now, yes, too, they have to be prepared to be online teachers and learners. And I think where that scenario doubles back is the idea that if they aren't prepared, we have to look real critically at our preparation programs to see how this is happening. So really what we think happens is this idea falls back on the teacher educators. How are we modeling in our classes? How are we giving pre-service teachers and even in-service teachers in our graduate courses opportunities to become online educators and effective online educators, not emergency online educators? I think there's a distinct difference. And so as we talk in this chapter, in our chapter in the Tech Infusion book, we mentioned that, you know, teacher educators are really confident in their content and pedagogy. We know that, okay? But it's pretty evident in some cases that they lack the necessary knowledge for infusing technology into their teaching and coursework. And so that's what got us thinking, and again, how we have tried to shape this problem and offer some solutions. So what I've put on the screen here, I won't talk about them specifically. I think they're up there more rhetorically for rhetorical questions. But I think for those of you in the audience who are teacher educators, we really have to think about how prepared were our teacher educators to make the transition. I know at our institution, some transitioned really well, and others, whoa, you know, I mean, it's just evident, you know, and it was a difficult time, but we're still coming out of that idea too. I think too, in that second question, how important it is for modeling. You know, how are we modeling for our pre-service teachers so that they can go out and do these same things, whether they're in face-to-face or virtual environments? Now, one of the things that we've talked about as a group is a lot of research is coming out in this area right now, especially in ed tech. And they're coming out with kind of that COVID response, like what are we learning and so forth. We are going to, although I think the book that we really want to promote today is Tech Infusion and so forth, but there's others coming out like this one here, what teacher educators should have learned from 2020. This one, it was put out by AACE, but again, there's some fascinating articles just on online learning and what have we learned as a group, especially related to PD. I wanted to just highlight a couple of things here in one of the articles, and you can see the citation there. These are what teacher educators need to transition to an online environment. So again, that rhetorical question of, okay, how well prepared are we with our digital skills and literacies, e-content development, instructional design, learning experience design, evidence-based digital pedagogy, and technology enhanced assessment and feedback. All of those are these skills that teacher educators need and use in an online environment. So how are we getting that professional development there? So let's go to the next slide. We talk in our chapter more about what, how, and why teacher educators learn. And in the literature, there are some distinct things that teacher educators need to be provided with. Specifically, academic engagement. It's powerful if it's collaborative. Obviously, that attending professional development programs, we're never apart from that. It always has to be part of what we do and how we do it. And then also, teacher educators spend a lot of time in reflective activity, but they also seek out professional development because usually it's some external type of requirement that they need, or personal ambition. I am going to learn how to do this well. Okay. And then also, a lot of times it's just a professional role transition. You know, maybe they're changing institutions and that institution teaches more online courses. Okay. So there's a lot of factors in that. And so, what can we do? The next slide, please. This is just one resource or solution. And actually, we offer this solution because it is certainly specific to the TETSIs. Now, what you need to understand is there's a lot of professional development opportunities out there from ISTE and other organizations that will gain our technology knowledge. But the creators of the TETSIs and a couple of other colleagues, we actually did develop a professional development program that specifically focuses on the TETSIs. It's four courses, and what we do is we group the TETSIs. And so if all you wanted to kind of learn about or learn more about is that kind of the TETSIs around online learning, all you would have to do is take course 2. Okay. So, but this is only one option. There's others out there as well. And like I say, I think there's a lot right now in the literature that we read that we can learn a lot about what's happening in online learning and how to do it better for our pre-service and in-service teachers. Okay. I think next is Kevin.
Thanks, Denise. I wanted to just first acknowledge those who are posting in the chat box. Thank you very much. We are reading them, and there will be a time shortly. We're going to get into breakout rooms now, and we can discuss some of those things you're posting in the chat. So thank you very much for posting and being interactive in that manner. You know, I often tell my students that when learning new technology, we need two things. We need playtime and playmates, right? We need time to just roll up our sleeves and interact and use the technology, just learn the technology, right? And what better way to do it than just hands-on? And then playmates. It often helps to use the technology in collaboration with another partner who may be experiencing similar things and use each other as a resource for support, right? Playtime and playmates. So in our breakout room today, we really want to hear from all of you with regard to your playtime and your playmates. More specifically, we have a few questions that we'd like for you to consider. And the breakout room, there will be facilitators in there who will share these questions with you. So if you don't have a chance to write them down, we will share them again in the room. The first thing we want you to discuss is how prepared were you? This is pre-COVID, this slide. Pre-COVID, to use online tools to enhance online teaching and learning. And this is really specifically getting at TETSI 4, right? So TETSI 4 looks at communicating using online tools, collaborating using online tools, designing instruction using online tools, and assessing your teacher candidates using online tools. So pre-COVID, how prepared were you? We're hoping you'll share some examples. The second question here is also pre-COVID, but now we're looking at TETSI 7. So how prepared were you pre-COVID to use effective strategies for teaching online and or in a blended hybrid learning environment? And if you look at the TETSI and you have a chance to open it and look at the criteria, you'll see that for TETSI 7, we're looking at modeling online and blended learning methods and strategies, providing those opportunities for our candidates to practice teaching online or in a blended or hybrid environment. And we're going to hope for some examples there that you'll share out. The last question with COVID is, pre-COVID that is, what training or professional development led to your infusion of technology in your practice, again, pre-COVID? We have one more set of questions I just wanted to share with you. We're going to also discuss in our groups post-COVID. So the questions here are very similar to pre-COVID. I won't read through them again. The only thing that changes on this slide is pre-COVID changes to post-COVID. So in the first set of questions, we're really looking at your preparation pre and then post, either during COVID, because we're still in it, or if you have developed some strategies and tools since, we really want to hear your examples as well. And then lastly on this slide, time permitting, we really would like for you to share or identify perhaps some future goals that you can set that would demonstrate your own proficiency in or progress towards both TETSES 4 and 7. So given the size of our group today, I think we will break out into smaller groups than originally planned. There will be a facilitator in each group. We will have about 15 minutes in the group to get through both sets of questions, pre and post COVID, and then we'll return whole group and share out what was discussed in the smaller groups. So Lori will now break us into our groups, and I will see you back here in about 15 minutes. Hi, everyone. We're just going to wait a few minutes for the other group to join us back in the main room here. Or is everyone back? Let me see. Yep, David and Denise are back as well. Awesome. Okay, so as we discussed in our group, we never have enough time for these breakout groups, right? The group collaborative piece always gets cut short, but hopefully you are able to continue the dialogue beyond this webinar. What we'd like to do now is just share a little bit from each group. I did create a Google document, so the link is here on our slide, and I will also post it in the chat box as well. If you wish to open the link, we will go ahead and there you go. To see what each group talked about. So David and Denise, do you have someone who will present? Do you want to share a little bit about what you guys discussed?
I think Denise is our presenter.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm our presenter. And actually, we put kind of our notes in the document already. A very interesting conversation with our group from the standpoint, I think our group was or would be considered kind of the high-tech users. Okay, so I think the people in our group are all the ones that were pretty comfortable with online teaching and whether it's been modeled and so forth. So probably a thing to think about is, how do we reach others? You know, how do we continue to reach others that aren't as confident, especially within our own programs and so forth? We just put a little bit of notes here. You know, I think for most of us, it was Brian that brought up, but like he said, overall, probably most of us were marginally prepared to teach online. Not maybe us specifically, but especially our colleagues. And what kind of, how did that play into the mix of what happened, and especially what was being modeled by our pre-service and even in-service teachers. Online teaching concentration, integrating best practices in the courses taught. That was one of our, you know, takeaways, in that we have to do a better job in all of our courses, not just the ed tech course, not just the, you know, whatever. We have to make sure our colleagues are incorporating opportunities in their methods courses and so forth with online learning and effective online learning. Do you want me just to go high points on all of them, Kevin, or stop there? Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. I opened the video and not the mute. I think that's fine, Denise. If anyone from your group wishes to share or add to that, feel free at this time. Given the time we have left, we can transition if there's nothing else from your group.
Yeah, all of our notes are kind of in there and so forth. I think this is still an area that we need to be reflective and almost in retrospect, what do we need to do better moving forward? It's kind of that post-COVID question of online learning.
Yep. Thank you. Teresa, a little bit from our group.
I unmuted. Okay, so I'm the rebel and I didn't take notes in the structured way. So I'm going to go to the bottom of the surprise. David, stop shaking your head at me. I'm going to go to the bottom of that document and paste my notes. Whoa, in red. Beautiful. Let's not do red. That's not such a pleasing color. So I bolded some of the things that I think are interesting for this conversation. Jennifer talked about carrot and stick motivation in the battle to get faculty on board with the use of technology pre-COVID. Deb mentioned asynchronous pre-COVID. And that's, I think, one thing I want to underscore is that during COVID, we had a new technology that was presented to our field, and that was Zoom or whatever version of synchronous communications you've got. I, for one, was teaching online for many, many years, all async. So when Zoom came on, I wanted to capitalize on the COI, those instructor presences. And did I say that right? And I wanted to integrate meetings. Now I got a little pushback from students because they weren't so used to having synchronous commitments. So there was an adjustment that even as a tech savvy person and a person who was fairly ready, as ready as I could be, I had to figure that out. So that's an interesting thing that I think we need to tuck away as a nice positive outcome of COVID. Let's see. Kenny mentioned post-COVID that people are more participative and engaged in professional development efforts that he's put out. And, you know, we got a lot of doors open. So that's a true thing that I think we're all feeling. Ollie mentioned the comfort level and the tools pre-COVID, varying levels of faculty, whereas post-COVID, we have faculty who are more interested in asking questions and actually want to develop their skills. Again, open doors. And Seema mentioned damage control in the midst of all this, that there's been a lot of effort and time in non-proactive measures to address technology concerns. And I think now, you know, we can always think forward, right? Like that's, how can we be proactive about the future? We've had all these open doors for faculty development that we can promote as champions. So how do we best go about capitalizing on this moment in a forward-thinking light? We're not post-COVID yet.
Yeah. Can I follow up on that Seema comment? I think that's a really interesting comment and very important. Damage control. I just feel like that is going to be very, very critical, and it's critical for our not only our colleagues, teacher educators, but critical for our students as well, because like I had a lot of our students were in virtual field placements. So they were working with teachers that were working online, and they were all over the country too. I mean, it wasn't just the Midwest. We kind of went wherever we could find the connects that we needed. But one of my students that works with me in my center said, Dr. Crawford, I'm in a virtual field experience. And I said, oh, great. I said, because that should be a great opportunity, right? And they can get models and so forth. And she said, yeah, all I'm learning is what not to do. So I think it's interesting how at least this student had the capacity to know what wasn't right. But how many of our pre-service, especially pre-service teachers, can say that? You know, I mean, again, how can we develop that expertise in what's best practices in online. So it's going to be an interesting moving forward. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. And just checking the chat box here, and completely agree. You know, one thing we need to do is just listen more, right? Listen to our students and use the various technologies, as Anne mentioned in the chat box, that allow them to learn in ways that they want to learn, right? Another something else to consider as we move forward is keeping the conversation going, right? So David will facilitate and just share a little bit on these next two slides.
All right, yeah, so just a couple of things. So first of all, again, thank you all so very much for joining us. And one of the things that this particular webinar and this entire webinar series, and you're reading the book. So I see you all have your phones as you're holding up, you're getting that QR code there for a link to the book. All of this is so that, you know, from what Teresa was talking about, you know, we can either move people from a white dot to a pink dot, or from a pink dot to a red dot, and we can all get around that line together and work on that technology integration. And one of the best ways to do that is to not work on this problem all by ourselves and to work on this collectively. And so that that link there, I just put it in the chat window as well, goes to a form just to collect some basic information so that as we're working on this and continuing to move in Fusion and the TETSIs and all of this forward, you know, we can maybe pair some people up and say, hey, here's someone who's got a similar research interest. We can do all of this together. We're much more effective working together than we are working by ourselves. So let's just keep that in mind and continue to move as a community. All right, you can go to the next slide. One of the reasons I know that we're a lot stronger working together is that the four of us have been working on this for 4 years, 5 years. Time keeps on ticking as it goes by. It's a long time. And so I know that as a group, collectively, we've done so much more than any of us could have done by ourselves. And there's our contact information. You know, we're the group that wrote this chapter in this book on the TETSIs. We put the TETSIs together and published them. We designed the TETSI PD course. We've done lots of this, and it's been possible because we've been working as a group and going together with all of us. So if you would like to contact any of us, that's all of our information of the wonderful institutions that we are, where we are at. When we started this project, just fun fact, I think I've got a second here. Fun fact, I was at James Madison University in Virginia. So most of the time when we were meeting, we had one person in each of the 4 time zones across the country, which made meetings just a joy and a delight. And that's right. And we did all the meetings via conference call. We started this so long ago. We weren't even using Zoom when we did this. And then poor Teresa is in Arizona, so sometimes she's in one time zone, sometimes she's in another, and yeah. So we had all sorts of great time. But it's so important to find a group and find a group that will uplift you and keep you working and keep you motivated around something that you're passionate about. As we did. And so we love this and we love talking about this. And if you want to talk to us more about it, we would be so happy to talk to you more about it.
Yep. And just 2 things. Thanks, David. First, be certain to check out the chat box. Emily Reed from ISTE just posted the link to our chapter, should you wish to have access to that chapter. And before I turn it over to Lori from ISTE for just some final remarks, I wanted to just highlight on this slide the hashtags. So if you are on Twitter, please, post. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have you share your experiences, interactions, not only with the TETSIs, but also with the textbook, Championing Technology and Fusion in Teacher Prep. So Lori from ISTE will wrap things up.
Great, thank you so much. This was a great conversation. I really enjoyed listening to all of the feedback and hearing your thoughts on this. And it was really nice of you, Denise, to feature the ebook that Dennis and I were fortunate enough to be co-authors of one of the chapters on. So thank you for that too. So for all of you that joined us today, thank you so much for attending, for having this conversation and taking the time to talk about technology and fusion, especially in this pre and hopefully future post-COVID world. Please feel free to sign up for our future championing webinars. And we will be coming to a close on this one and hopefully starting another one at ISTE. So if you are planning to attend, please attend our ISTE 21 live presentation. The link is also available to you on this slide deck. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today.
And
Thanks,
a quick reminder, the next webinar in this series is a week from today on April 14th. So don't forget to go out and register for it. It's going to be another great session just like this one.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.